Yes, this is Brad Lewis, and this is my presentation on the Book of Learning and Forgetting for EDL 606. The summary for me was basically Frank Smith had a radical goal in mind in writing his text, which was to drastically change the mode of learning and teaching within our schools. He states that the reason school improvement goals and strategies have failed so consistently is that they are trying to save a system which is broken. We do not have a system which supports true learning, and instead of trying to save what we have, we need to abandon it for one in which learning is accepted as naturally occurring process. He believes learning is not hard or difficult, that people easily learn what is interesting and relevant for them. For that reason, this should be the job of teachers, not constant testing and test prep, but active learning. 5 primary points from the text, I believe. First, the official theory of learning is the newcomer, only emerging within the last 100 years. For Mr. Smith, the official theory is what we have about the testing and memorization and kind of that scientific learning that he talks about, whereas natural learning is what had happened throughout history. People learned by doing. You were an apprentice. You learned the job you needed to have. You learned what your parents knew. And you learned very naturally by the people around you, the community you were a part of. Second idea would be teaching and learning has been designed for logistical control. Our system now is based on making sure that we have a product at the end. Students are looked at as a product. He says it starts basically with the Industrial Revolution and the need for skilled workers, and it's continued on through. And we've designed a system that works that way. Number 3, students are reluctant to read, write, or produce anything that does not have a grade attached. Anybody that's been in the classroom probably in the last couple of decades can attest to this. One of the very first things you hear from students when doing assignments, doing a lesson, is for a grade. And in that question is how much attention they intend to pay to it. As a university student, we are the same way. I mean, I was conditioned to do that. What's for a grade? What is to expand my knowledge? These things are going to get not the same look, and that's a flaw. The question should never be, are the students learning, but always, what are the students learning? Sorry if I had a little misprint there. But are the students learning, but always, what are the students learning? I really like this quote, and this goes to a big part of his primary point about natural learning, that students are always learning, period. Even if we think they're not, they're learning in the classroom, whether it's they're learning they're not good at something or that they're failing, they are always learning. Every individual is constantly learning throughout life. So I thought this was really a powerful quote and something teachers should look at. I didn't include it in my quotes because I included it here, but that teachers need to be aware of and know that there's never a time in your classroom a student's not learning, and we need to be cognizant of that and careful about what they're learning. And then the other big idea of what is going on in classrooms is a disaster, not a problem. Need to abandon ship, not continually try to save. This was huge. Huge part. He wants a complete reimagining of our educational system. Not a revision, not make it a certain way, but completely tear down what we have, leave it, and start over with something that's more effective. Recommendations. I would highly recommend this book for multiple courses. At first I was kind of confused about the book, didn't really enjoy probably the first 20 or 30 pages of it, but by the end was very engaged. It's extremely thought-provoking, and I put in here for that reason I would highly recommend it. It agree or disagree with his points. It forces you to think about the purpose, the policies around education. And so I think it's a great book because of the discussions it can foster. 5 best quotes. Learning can be effortless, continual, and permanent. I thought this quote really summed up the overall intention of the book. I believe it's debatable, but a great summation of the view of education proposed inside the text. And I'll talk a little bit about the debate with my questions. The scientific theory of learning offered control. startlingly accurate. Many times that's what we're concerned with, control. The use of busy work is a prime example of this. We don't trust students to necessarily manage their own learning or use time, and so it's all about structure, minimize free time, and that's about control. I mean, we will tell teachers do not allow much free time, and that is kind of a sad thing, but it is a fact that has to be done. We want to plan, to use 100% of the minutes in a classroom, and to use those effectively. But Smith would say that free time could be key to learning. Third, the only way for teachers and students to survive is stop trying to save the system and save themselves. This is in line with the abandoned ship. And like I said, this is kind of when the book all clicked for me. Everything and really the true extent of the author's goal came clear for me. The word education was once largely synonymous with experience. That's my fourth one. And I put in here one of the few ways that Smith may agree with some of the stuff going on. If you think about all our pushes for project-based learning, teachers as facilitators, different kind of things like that, we're going with that. And this goes to his point about learning from community, apprenticeships, things like that, of how natural learning was done in his opinion. And the fifth one, the effort to memorize interferes with memorization because it destroys understanding. Great quote. Teaching history, I often had to try to encourage my students to see the context, to see history as a story, not as 1,000 different names and places and dates and things, but to the context of it all. And memorization, I can see how that interferes with the true understanding, with the learning. And with our standardized test taking, we create just generation after generation that what they do is memorize something long enough to take a test and then it's gone. And so I thought that quote was really good. My questions, is learning truly not effective if we have to struggle? I've thought a lot about that since reading the book. I truly feel that there are some things that are just going to be a struggle to learn. Obviously, they're different for different people as we have different skill sets, but I don't know if I 100% agree that, there's never a struggle in learning. We're going to have to struggle sometimes when we put ourselves out of our comfort zones, and I think that's an important thing. The second one, does the author have a clear understanding of what secondary classrooms are like and adolescent behaviors? I want to make sure that it's not too much a pie in the sky thing with adolescents. What they are interested in, what they want to be engaged in, what they find relevant is not necessarily always going to be the same as the adults. And so I think there's a balance somewhere. I think there certainly is an amount of control that needs to be given up by teachers and educators inside the classroom, but I also think we're not in some utopian ideal world where everyone is going to use their time wisely. We need some guiding in that time usage and how to do it. So, and then third, how do we break the chain of students who are learning what they cannot do? And how is it tied to our system in which anyone not pursuing a university education is seen as less than? I think we've developed a situation now where with the tracks we have, career and college promise, everybody being university qualified, not everybody's a university student, and not everybody should be. There are people whose intelligences and skill sets lie in areas that a university is not a requirement for. And we need to value those things. We need to value those professions, value those pursuits, and I'm not sure we do anymore. I think now we've almost created where if you're not going to go to university, then you have failed somehow. And I think that kind of gets into what he talks about, where they're learning that they're failure. They're learning that they're not good at academics, and maybe therefore they're not equal to those who are good at academics. And I wonder, how can we change that? How can we place value on professions and people that are not university bound, that's not what they're meant for? And I think if we could place some value on there, then we could limit the negative perceptions that they maybe have of themselves as they come through our school. So that's my presentation. I hope it's not too long. I apologize. I tried to go as fast as I could. Thanks for listening.